The DJI Pocket 3 was released in 2023 and I've been using it quite intensively ever since. The question is it still worth it in 2025 with so many new cameras out in the market? And first things first, this is a 10-bit camera filming on 4K. You get a fixed 20mm lens, and let's not forget that you have an f2 aperture that, yes, is fixed. There is nothing you can do about it. But the fact that it's fixed at f2 means that you get a fair amount of shallow depth of field or blur background. And if you use ND filters with this camera, which is something that I always recommend people to use, your footage is going to have really nice motion blur and it's going to look as good as any other camera. And if filming for social media and YouTube is something that you're interested and you're looking into, I have a free ebook that is literally about filming and shooting YouTube videos. And I give you everything that you need to do with color images and breakdown of equipment and suggestions. So if that's something that you want, it's totally free. I'll leave a link in the video description. And one thing that the DJI Pocket 3 does that I don't know many other cameras that do it is the fact that you can set an ISO range for exposure so that the camera can adjust automatically within the given range if you are filming in a situation where you cannot do it. Like for instance, if you use this camera as an action cam and you are cycling, for instance, down a hill or on the road, you're not gonna be touching the screen and adjusting the ISO as you go from a bright area to a dark area. You set an ISO range and let the camera do it. I think that's a fantastic functionality that I cannot see in most or any camera out there. And let's not forget one thing, this is a camera and a gimbal all integrated in such a tiny footprint. If you want to have the same level of functionality on a mirrorless camera, first look at the size of a mirrorless camera. Obviously, there are smaller ones, but you get the idea. You need a camera and then you need a gimbal and things start to look heavy and cumbersome. And this is all integrated within this tiny footprint. And another aspect that you can easily do with this camera that is an absolute pain to do with mirrorless and a gimbal is moving time lapses and hyperlapses, because everything is integrated here. You just need to maybe use some small gimbal legs, mount it onto a table or onto a tripod, and that's it. You can do your moving time lapse and it does it really, really well. You want the same level of functionality, try and do a moving time lapse with a mirrorless camera and a gimbal, and things start to become a little bit impractical. So this is a big selling point, in my opinion, for the DJI Pocket 3. And another aspect that takes full advantage of the gimbal is tracking, because the DJI Pocket 3 offers 3 tracking modes: face tracking, dynamic framing, and active tracking. And that's gonna give you a lot of flexibility because, as you can clearly see, it actually tracks really well. And okay, it's not perfect and I wish there was a bit more adjustments for headroom, but the quality is actually really good. And you still have the same gimbal modes as every other gimbal. You have your follow, your tilt lock, your FPV, and even inception mode. And when you take into consideration the amount of time that you save and the amount of weight that you don't have to carry around, the DJI Pocket 3 becomes a very interesting proposition. And let's not forget that you can switch from horizontal filming to vertical filming by just flicking the monitor without losing any functionality compared to having to switch from horizontal to vertical with a camera on a gimbal that a lot of the times, or if not more often than not, you can't really use the gimbal as good as when in horizontal because of the weight distribution. And when it comes to resolutions, yes, you get your 4K up to 60 frames per second, but you also get a slow motion at 120 and 240 frames per second. And that's gonna give you incredible flexibility. And what's so great about the Pocket 3 is that you can go up to 60 frames per second, that you can then slow down in your edit suite, but you can also do 120 frames per second at 10-bit on D-Log color space. And because the Pocket 3 has a 1-inch sensor, you actually get very good low light performance. Actually, it's surprisingly good. It's much better than most cameras out there. And you even get a fully dedicated low light mode in case that you are in extreme low light situations. And let's not forget what you get in terms of sound recording, because if you bought the greatest combo when you purchased the DJI Pocket 3, you get the DJI wireless microphone that is integrated natively within the DJI Pocket 3. So no need to carry a receiver or wires. You literally just turn it on and you are recording. And not only that, but you are recording a 32-bit float signal, which means that your audio is always gonna sound great. That's just not something that you can do with most cameras, where you need to involve a wireless radio mic with a receiver and then a wire that needs to go onto the camera itself, and the whole thing is nowhere near as streamlined as it is with the DJI Pocket 3. With the Mimo app, you can control the camera and the gimbal totally remotely. Even if you mount the camera to a gimbal, you're not gonna be able to have control of both the camera and the gimbal in the same app. But because it's a smartphone, you can clamp it onto the side of the Pocket 3 and you get the Pocket 3 with its integrated screen and the smartphone right next to it. You then have the larger smartphone screen to judge framing, composition and any other settings. That's something that no other camera or setup out there gives you, and in my opinion is one of the biggest selling points. And because the Pocket 3 is so small, you can use it as an action cam. For instance, if you mount it onto a chest mount or put it onto a micro dolly to create some really amazing and unique shots, especially if you use a third-party lens like a macro lens, or onto a monopod so that you can do G-bomb or crane up type of shots. That's just the level of functionality and flexibility that no other setup out there is gonna give you. But despite all of this, if this hasn't convinced you of how relevant the Pocket 3 still is in 2025, this is the biggest thing, okay? It's this, okay? I'm up and running in 2 seconds. And when I finish, I flick the monitor, the gimbal locks, and it goes into my pocket, and that's it. No having to carry a big camera with a big ass gimbal that weighs a ton and I need to carry a camera bag. No, literally in the palm of your hand, you are ready to go in no time. Trust me, this is the biggest selling point. You get so much packed into such a tiny footprint. A 4K camera, a gimbal, an integrated LCD screen, an integrated wireless receiver. You can control this remotely, both the camera and the gimbal. It's tiny, it's small, you can fit it anywhere. And yes, it's not gonna give you the same look and feel of a mirrorless camera with an interchangeable lens. I mean, this setup costs 5 times more than the Pocket 3 by itself. And to this, I need to add a wireless radio mic and a gimbal and so many more accessories. So if you are someone that wants that look of an interchangeable lens, of an 85mm lens with the color science of Sony or Panasonic or Canon, this is not it. But for many people, if not most people creating content for social media platforms like TikTok or Instagram, this is a beast. This is an insane value for money. What camera gives you so much packed into such a tiny body? And just a thought for you, Apple records all the keynote speeches nowadays using an iPhone. So the gap between the big mirrorless cameras and these tiny powerhouses is getting narrower than ever. And if you want to know how to get the best out of this tiny little camera, I have a fully dedicated course where I teach you everything that you need to know in just 14 days. And I don't just teach you about how to get the best out of the camera, but about lighting, sound recording, framing, composition, and everything that you need to know to get absolutely amazing looking footage out of this camera. If this is something that you're interested, watch this video here or click in the video description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.